Hey Beer Geeks, before we get into today's video, in this strange and uncertain world, we just want to remind you that Patreon is all that keeps us going. So if you've got a little bit of spare cash and you haven't been furloughed, please head to patreon.com/craftbeerchannel. What do you say, Brad?
Mate, I can't even afford proper hats anymore. It's getting real.
Thanks, Brad. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been pushing the hashtag Beer Stash, and that was part of a campaign we've been trying to do to get you guys to seize the day, seize the occasion, and crack open the stuff you've been saving for a very, very special moment. And what is a more special moment than the end of the world? Now, as a result of that, we got lots of people asking about my beer stash, which you can see at a link in the descriptions box below, and how to build their own beer stashes and what beers to age. So we thought it would be a great time to do a video about what you can age, how you can age it, and what happens when you do. So this is our top tips on starting, or indeed caring for, your beer stash.
I can't think of a better time to just crack open some amazing stuff. But my bigger question is, what kind of beers can we even age? Because obviously we can't age everything, right?
Yeah, the most important thing to remember is that 99.9% of beers should never, ever, ever be aged. But there are some rules you can use and apply to make sure that the beers that you do want to try to age might pan out okay. So what I'm about to tell you comes from a mix of science, superstition, and my own goddamn mistakes.
I myself have made many, which we're going to touch upon now.
We'll get to the cupboard of death that is Brad's beer stash. But yeah, so there's some really simple rules to follow. The first one, perhaps the most important one, is that the beer should be over 7%. I've never managed to age a beer, and I've not come across anyone who's managed to age a beer successfully that wasn't over that number. It's an arbitrary number, but it seems like a pretty good rule. You need that higher alcohol content. So the next thing you have to remember is that it should be bottle conditioned, but it absolutely has to be unpasteurized. So if it's pasteurized, it's no good. If it's unpasteurized, that could be good. If it's bottle conditioned, that's the dream, that's the pinnacle. That's when you know it's probably going to do okay. The next thing is that it should probably be dark, but we'll get to reasons why dark beers, or at least beers with some caramelized or roasted malts, is a much better idea. And the final rule, and this one is really hard and fast, you shouldn't age anything that has adjuncts in or a significant amount of hops in. And specifically, because I know there's American barley wines out there that you can age, specifically hops towards the back end. So anything dry hopped, anything that's supposed to be really aromatic with the hops, anything hop forward. Why might that be, Brad?
Well, I mean, hop profiles will die off over time. You know, like anything hop forward, you're usually told to drink it, the fresher the better.
Exactly. So, Brad, why is there a Cloudwater Dipper V3 still in your fridge?
Because I'm an absolute plonker. For anyone, our American friends, this is a bit of a legendary beer, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah, this is the beer. This was the first ever New England double IPA brewed. It launched 1,000 ships. We were actually there for the brew day, and you can watch that video in the cards coming up now. But Brad managed to forget that he had this, which is how his entire beer stash has come about in the cupboard of death. So Brad, I'd like you to crack that and let us know what flavours you get.
I'm just going to... Oh, hello. Okay. I'm going to show this to you as well, Johnny, so you can get an idea of the colour.
You got an old school craft beer channel glass there, Brad is.
Yeah, you nicked all the good ones off me.
And ran off into isolation.
It's pretty dark. It's very hazy. Oh my god. Okay, so there's no hop. It just smells of caramel. That's what it smells of. Caramel. Oh, that's sad. I'm really sad.
Are we getting wet cardboard?
Yeah, it's cardboard.
Dust?
Do you know, it's not dusty. It's not that dusty. It's so sweet, though. Why is it so sweet?
I mean, New England IPAs were incredibly sweet, and having that hop bitterness, what there actually was in the New England IPA, does balance that a little bit, but beers do get sweeter as they age. So that's definitely come to play there.
I've basically killed a unicorn here, and I don't feel too proud about it.
You're a unicorn slayer. I knew it with that bandana.
I'm an absolute numpty. What have I done here? How have I done this to this beer?
Sad Rambo asks, how should he age his beer properly? Right, so what's happening in the bottle? What's popping up now is a graph, right? And this graph is from a study done by the amazingly named Bart Vanderhagen. And he was like a QA guy, quality assurance guy for some big breweries. I think Hoegaarden maybe now, but AB InBev. And he did this study to work out how to protect lagers, macro lagers, better from oxidation. So I've been reading lots of his papers and kind of flipping them on their head to work out, what flavours we actually want. Basically, what happens in a bottle can be split down into two. One is stuff that's happening due to fermentation or re-fermentation in the bottle, and the other can be broken down into oxidation processes. Right? So we'll start with the fermentation processes because that's actually, bizarrely, a little bit easier to get our heads round. So re-fermentation, bottle conditioning, it's when yeast is still eating up sugars, creating alcohol and other flavours in the bottle or the can. So that's one of the most important things that should be going on if you're aging a beer. There should still be some yeast action happening. So any wild beers, mixed fermentation beers, farmhouse beers, any beers that use those kind of terminology might be good for aging because there's still going to be fermentation happening in that bottle. So I've got a bottle of Gers, and this one was bottled in 2018. So this is 18 months to 2 years old. Brad, what have you got your end to try?
Yeah, I've got a Duchess de Bourguignon.
Close.
Oh. I can't say it's Gascoigne. Bourgogne.
So both these beers, Duchess de Bourgogne, which is a Flemish red, it's known for its acetobacter, its oak tannins, these kind of flavours. The Gers is known for its Brett, for its lacto, for its pediococcus, so it's lemony, bretty, cidery funkiness. These are things that are going to be enhanced as we age because the yeast is going to continue acting, continue eating the sugars. So what we're going to expect is the beer to get a little bit thinner, a little bit funkier, and possibly a little bit more carbonated. One thing I should say is that Duchesse is actually pasteurised. So I'll be interested to see how much it has changed.
It's got a like almost like a balsamic vinegar kind of nose to it. Okay, it's actually pretty mellow.
Are you picking up anything else, or is that pasteurisation just stopped that process?
It's so sweet.
Yeah.
It's like drinking balsamic vinegar, a little bit. Right. That kind of twangy sweetness.
With my Gers, so I think anybody who loves Gers and knows them is going to spot two amazing things from that. One is the absolute clarity of that beer. So as you age beer, if you age it upright, it's going to drop out. The colloidal stability, that's what it's known as. So it's super clear, and it's also started going a little bit darker, a little bit more honeyed, and there's definite honey flavours, a slight sherry tone to this beer that isn't there when it's fresh, but it's tasting actually really beautiful. I'm going to make a little note saying 2-year beer sale lambics are banging. You get that honey sweetness, that slight change, and it's great.
Amazing.
Because it's bottle conditioned, what's happening is it's still fermenting, and fermentation involves the take up of oxygen. So it will use up that oxygen that will be sat in the top of the bottle to help itself with its fermentation, and that slows down the other thing that's happening in these little microclimates in these bottles.
So in my terrible Dipper V3, Johnny, there was obviously no re-fermentation happening. So what was it that changed the beer?
So that's down to the oxidation that was happening in that beer. And New England IPAs are particularly sensitive to this. So oxidation, we'll have all tasted it if you've ever had a beer that's just a little bit old, like getting towards the end of its best before or beyond its best before, or it's been stored way too warm, and you get that cardboardy, wet cardboard kind of aroma and taste. You might get a really dusty kind of old hop kind of flavour to it, maybe cheesy as well. And that's kind of specific to really, really hoppy beers, which is why you should never, ever age a hoppy beer. It's too kind of dominating. But that oxidation process can be positive, particularly if it happens in a slow and controlled way and on certain ingredients in beer that are much better for it. So in these big, malty, darker beers, it can actually start presenting like sherry or port, this exact same process. And that comes about, if you ever drink a sherry, there is a kind of phenolic, alcoholic, musty kind of smell to these these sherries and these ports. And it's exactly the same process. So that is signs of oxidation in those spirits, which is wanted. And it's the same in aged beer. We want those kind of slightly boozy but still very soft flavours to come out. And we can tease that out by offering up the right kind of chemicals. So, using roasted malt or caramelized malt, these ones that have gone through the Maillard process, so that's the stuff that makes it really tasty to humans. That's why we started cooking our meat, basically. If you've got lots of that Maillard process happening in the malt, you're also more likely to get oxidative characteristics.
Yeah, so we're looking for more kind of sweetness and the sugary, caramelly, profiles to come out, rather than the kind of stuff, the hops that it's going to die out and turn kind of stale and cardboardy, like you say.
So shall we have a taste of some beers that might have gone through that process and see if we're going to get it?
Hell yeah.
So what are you about to drink, Brad?
I'm drinking a Troubadour Obscura, which is it's a big old, I think it's Belgian. It's a Belgian stout.
Is it coming for you?
It is.
There you go, re-fermented in the bottle, so there's some action happening.
It's alive. Yes, this is promising.
Meanwhile, I'm going to be drinking a 3-year-old can, I believe, of a beer called Leeds Lurking, which is a collaboration between Other Half and Northern Monk. They made a cherry and Peruvian coffee imperial porter. I picked this beer for 2 reasons. One, to talk about the oxidative character, and to hopefully prove that aging with adjuncts isn't necessarily a good idea. So on this one, there is loads of sherry. It's interesting because it's sherry with cherry.
Sherry with cherry.
The cherry aroma has kind of stuck around. The coffee has died a death. Coffee is a terrible thing to age. Because now it just tastes like, if you've ever found an old bag of like coffee beans that you forgot about and it just smells like dirt. That's kind of what you get when you age a coffee beer. The cherry's really stuck around and there's some nice coffee and roasted malt bitterness on the end. But it's not that punchy, beautiful beer that I remember. So it's not aged that well. And I think, they probably made the malt bill a little bit lighter to allow for those other things to shine. And as a result, that's ended up a little bit meh 2 years later. What about yours?
There's some portiness there. It's kind of fruity. It's got a little bit of sherry characteristic. Most of all, I'd say it's just quite thin. But it's certainly got some of those qualities you were talking about.
Can you hold it up to the camera so that people can see it at home? Because to me, that looks like really red rather than dark like an Imperial Stout. It's literally thinned and changed colour.
I can almost see through it. It's certainly got a rosy red tint to it. It's it's certainly given me some alcohol burn on the way down. My father couldn't. My dad loved port. He used to love drinking port. And when he did, we used to find him asleep on the toilet because it would just knock him out. So this has got that kind of quality to it for me, I think. Did I mess that one up as well? Did I wait too long?
This is where I don't really have a direct answer for you. Although we've seen the signs of what's in the bottle, the most important thing to remember is that you're going to be holding it at your own temperatures, in your own places, in your own homes. You're going to be buying from different breweries. So there's no real hard and fast rule that I can give you. All I can say is store it cool, store it dark. When I say cool, I mean like probably the temperature you'd want to drink it at. Like that's pretty much the best rule for how to store a beer. You want to drink an IPA or a lager cold, so you should store it cold. You want to drink a lambic a tiny bit warmer, maybe 8 to 10, so store it at that temperature. Actually, the best person to give you an answer for this is John Keeling, who I interviewed in our last video about the vintage ale from Fuller's, and he had a really nice way of describing what's happening in a bottle and how and when you should be cracking these beers. So we'll cut to John via Skype as well and see what he had to say. Some people who have been aging beer say that beer can kind of age in a waveform kind of way, so you can have it sort of go a little bit off and then come back around.
Those people must have been listening to my lectures.
Is that right? So you're telling them it?
No, it does go more like a sine wave, but each peak is different in flavour from the peak before. Yeah? And I first recognised this is when we used to do tastings in the hop cell at Fuller's and we used to invite journalists and beer writers and whatever, and we used to do say 10 years worth of vintage ale, and we did one where I think it was the 1998 out of the 10 scored the least points. and everybody said it was the worst of the vintages. And then 6 months later, we did it again, and it was the best of the vintages. So I thought, what's great? It doesn't rise in a straight line to a peak and then fall off a peak. It's doing something else. And just like all of nature, it goes in cycles. It doesn't go in straight lines. Well, why would we expect a natural product to go in a straight line?
Yep.
It just doesn't happen.
It's its own little sort of microclimate in there.
It is,
constantly shifting.
and therefore, when you think about it as well, the storage conditions affect that microclimate. So if you're storing it in your house and I'm storing it in my house, we have different climates.
Mm.
Yeah, we might be storing it in a different place, and therefore the beers then become their own world. And you might be tasting a 2010, and I might be tasting a 2010, and they might be different flavours.
Yep.
Because of that.
Which is a magical thing about aging beer.
That is exciting. And you cannot get perfection. Yeah. But you can get near to it, or you can fail. You know what I mean? It's always something. You can always think, oh, I've just drank that and it was absolutely fantastic. But would it have been better in another 2 years? Well, you're not going to know now, are you?
So John's saying it ages like a sine wave, which means that troubadour beer you just had, it might have been awesome 6 months ago, and it might be awesome in 6 months' time, but it was just in a bit of a trough at this period where the yeast had been doing certain stuff, the oxidation had reached a certain point, and all those lines that we saw on the graph earlier are all in a mess, and they're not actually going to present something delicious on the palate like it did with my Gears.
So what you're saying, Johnny, is I need to have about 6 of these Troubadour Obscura and drink them at 3-month intervals.
Yeah, if you are going to attempt it, it is best to buy 2 or 3 of them because you'll get a different experience each time, and you should probably know what it's like fresh, what it's like a little bit later, and what it's like a long time into the future. Guys, thank you for watching that. I hope that's been helpful. Store cold, keep it high alcohol, keep it dark, and keep it bottle fermented or mix firm, and you should have lots of adventures in aging beer. We're still looking to know what your beer stashes are. We will read them out either in our videos or on the Friday 5 p.m. podcast, which is put live every Friday at 5 p.m. and it involves me and Brad having a beer and talking about this week's adventures.
Cheers, man. I love you. I love you guys. Stay safe at home.